Hello, my miraculous friend, and welcome to another episode of the Magnify Your Miracles podcast. This is Reverend Francis Faden, and I'm so grateful that we get to spend this time together today because I have such a treat for you. We have returning with us Perdita and Clark Strand, authors of one of my favorite books, The Way of the Rose. But before we get into this amazing conversation, let's get ourselves into a space where we can actually receive this inspiration. Take a few deep breaths with me, if you will. If you're driving, please keep your eyes on the road, but you can still bring your awareness to your breath. And breathing in the energy of expansion, breathing out anything you no longer need. And just very gently creating that space within you to receive this beautiful inspiration. Whatever it is that you most need to hear today. And just feeling that gratitude, knowing that whatever it is that you need to hear will be exactly what comes your way. So let's take one more deep breath together in gratitude, and we can begin. All right. Well, thank you once again, my friend, for joining us today. I'm so excited. I've been waiting for this for a year because we talked to Perdita and Clark a year ago, and we could have gone on for hours and hours and hours. So this is, in my mind, this is part 2 of that same episode, even though it's a year later. But in case you missed it, I'm going to introduce you to them. I'm just going to read a little bit of the bio. So Clark Strand and Perdita are co-founders of The Way of the Rose, an inclusive fellowship of rosary friends dedicated to the earth and to the lady by any name we wish to call her. Strand is an author of numerous books and articles on spiritual practices, including Seeds from a Birch Tree, Writing Haiku and the Spiritual Journey, and Waking Up to the Dark, Ancient Wisdom for a Sleepless Age. Finn is a children's book author and former high school teacher, and they live with their family in the Catskill Mountains. Help me welcome Perdita and Clark. Yay!
Thank you, Francis. It's great to see you again.
Oh my God. So great. So great to be with you guys. So I'm wondering, we've had such an interesting year. I know things have really expanded for you over at The Way of the Rose. And I know you guys are in the miracle business every day. So since last we spoke, have you had any shifts or different perspectives on miracles? Is there anything that's changed in your definition or in your own experience in this last year?
We've certainly seen a lot more of them.
Yeah.
You know, I think one of the things I'm struck by, Francis, is how generous Our Lady is with miracles. You know, when she appeared to Catherine Labouré at Rue de Bac, Catherine famously asked her, there was light coming from her fingers and her rings, but some of her rings were not emitting light. And Catherine, very interestingly, curiously said, why not? And Our Lady said, those are the things that people forget to pray for. And what I'm struck by is how generous and easy Our Lady is in granting miracles.
Most of our the limitations on miracles, or all of the limitations on miracles, are the ones we impose and we set on the miraculous. And Our Lady often says that the world is made for miracles and is constructed in such a way that miracles occur naturally,
organically through the permaculture of the soil.
That's right.
You know, there was a woman who came to the shrine. She just wrote, in our Facebook group, Way of the Rose, which is sort of very un-Facebook like fellowship, very fun people who tolerate each other's differences and celebrate each other and play nice with others. Yeah. But a woman wrote there, I didn't even know, she had come to the shrine. Her husband had lost his job. She'd lost her job during COVID. And so unbeknownst to us, they had driven to the shrine of Our Lady of Woodstock. And they'd made an offering to the lady, and they'd gotten into their car, and her husband had been offered a job.
Wow.
And she said it was that fast. Mm-hmm. She came out, she had brought Our Lady a heart and put out the heart, and she'd also offered tobacco in a way that felt ritually right to her.
Yeah.
And then a moment later, she said she couldn't believe it. It was so instantaneous. Yeah. Now, her next prayer was to find housing near where the job was that her husband had been offered. And that hadn't been answered quite as quickly. But what had begun to grow in her was the faith that the answer would come in its own
Mhm.
time. And I think we're going to talk a lot about prayer and timing today.
And that often happens in the beginning. Our Lady is always generous, but especially in the beginning. The things you pray for in the beginning, you often get quickly. But that's to set you on the path of prayer. And one of the things you learn we're going to talk about novenas today. The 54-day novena, where you pray for the same thing for 54 days and then start another. And one of the things you learn is that the important thing is being on the path of the heart's desire. Once you're on that path, walking the path becomes your great joy, and the great expression of your joy and happiness in living. And things naturally unfold in their time, and you learn to be patient, not too patient, but patient, and to pray steadily, from day to day.
Yeah. So not everybody knows what a novena is. Not everybody was raised with all of that
We weren't
kind of
raised.
background. Yeah, right. A lot of people in Way of the Rose weren't raised with it. So I'm wondering, and I know that you guys do a lot of research and you have all kinds of cool books. And I'm wondering if you could give people an idea of the origin of novenas. What does it mean? How do people typically do them? And then I want to talk a little bit more about how you guys do it, because I think it's so amazing what you offer.
So let's take the word novena. Novena means 9.
Mm-hmm.
And 9, when you start talking about the Great Mother, turns out to be a really powerful number all around the world, not just in Catholicism or Christianity, and not just even in organized religion. You find the number 9 powerful in indigenous communities, among the Kogi people, one of the last hunter-gatherer groups in Colombia. They have a tradition of honoring the 9 mothers. And you see this in India, the 9 manifestations of Durga that you honor for 9 days. You see this in Iceland, in the 9 manifestations of the mother. In Greece, the 9 muses. This idea of the mother being connected to the number 9, I'm sure you can guess where it comes from.
Tell me.
Guess.
With the mother in general, or specifically Mother Mary?
No, all mothers around the world, all goddess cultures are devoted to the number 9, not just Mother Mary. Mother Mary is just the latest incarnation of a relationship to that number. And it has to do with the 9 months a woman is pregnant.
Oh, yeah. Duh.
And it's so obvious, and it's so
is.
simple, and it's so in straight. Why are there 9 mothers among the Kogi people? Because there are 9 mothers. Why are there 9 muses? Why? So Clark will tell you where the Christian tradition traces it back, but it's important to know that 2,000 years ago, the idea of a devotional period of 9 days running was already really old. It was thousands and thousands and thousands of years old before Christianity comes on the scene.
I mean, the practice of 9 days of prayer goes all the way back to the Romans. It was a Roman practice rather than a Jewish or a Christian practice, and it was adopted very early on by Christians. And this, what the quote first novena really in Christianity is Mary praying with the disciples in the upper room at Jerusalem after the ascension of Jesus. And so this tradition is very, very old, and it gets associated with all sorts of saints. Like there's not just one kind of novena. There are like tons and tons of novenas.
Well, let me explain first though, but let's go back to the Pentecost for a minute, just so we can stay there, because this is where the tradition. So Jesus dies and then he's resurrected. These are for our non-Christian viewers. And then he hangs around for 40 days. Okay. And then he disappears. He's off. And there's a lot of tumult. People are really upset, right? First of all, they're being hunted by the Romans. Their leader has disappeared. Everything is in turmoil. And Mary organizes everybody the way mothers do and says, sit down and stop kvetching and start praying. And they pray for 9 days and they're in hiding.
Yeah.
So they're scared. This isn't just let's go on a meditation retreat. This is our lives are in danger.
Yeah.
We're lost. We're hopeless.
Yeah.
And they pray for 9 days. And on the 9th day, the Holy Spirit descends, and suddenly all kinds of miracles appear. They can heal people, they can speak to animals, they can speak to anybody, they can handle snakes. We can go into all the goddess stuff that's going on here, but if you want, but that's another time we do in our book. But so there's this 9-day period, which, as Clark said, is connected also to the Romans and the Greeks. But this becomes the foundation for 9 days of devotion, either to Mary or to Jesus or to ultimately to lots of different saints, to break through in prayer.
So the way this gets connected to the Rosary is interesting, because people would pray novenas to, like, Our Lady of Sorrows or to Our Lady of Lourdes, things like that. And this tradition developed. But there weren't any novenas really connected to the Rosary specifically until the late 19th century. And there was a young girl, Italian girl, who had 3 separate incurable illnesses that she was dying of.
Wow.
And this was near Pompeii. And she had been treated by many different doctors. They had all given up on her and sent her home to die. She and her family began praying a 9-day novena to Our Lady of Pompeii, who was an apparition and an icon in the nearby basilica. And they prayed for 9 days. At the end of the 9 days, she wasn't cured.
Yeah.
And so she complained just out loud to Our Lady of Pompeii, I have prayed earnestly for 9 days and I still haven't been cured. Whereupon an apparition appeared of Our Lady of Pompeii, and she said, if you wish to be fully cured, pray 3 novenas and petition. So that's 9 times 9, or 3 times 9, which is 27 days, and 3 more in Thanksgiving, and your prayer will be answered. So famously, she then prayed 2 more 9-day novenas in petition, and then 3 in thanks, even though she hadn't been cured yet.
This is where the magic happens, Francis. It's that thank you without any results.
On the 28th day, you begin to exert a kind of a praying body English. You really just sort of put yourself into it like it's really happening, right? So she does this, and at the end of 54 days, she's completely cured. Now, this miracle, spread like, news of this miracle spread like wildfire throughout Italy and then everywhere else. And soon people all over the world were praying the 54-day Rosary Novena, which is what we do perpetually on a rolling cycle on Way of the Rose. And this became the most popular Rosary devotion in the world.
And there's some really interesting secrets hidden in this devotion that we didn't know until we started praying it. Because I started praying the 54-day novena. We can talk about its particular magic and energy. And it has a really interesting rhythm and energy. So you've got 20, you take a day to prepare, like, oh my goodness, what am I going to pray for 27 days? Now, I wake up in the morning and we pray together for an hour. I'm a mother. I worry. I fret. It takes me an hour to get through my laundry list of things I'm talking to Our Lady about. And then I also bring every day the same novena petition to her for 27 days. What's it going to be? What do I really need to pray to for 27 days? And then you start saying thank you for the next 27 days. And you know what I started to notice, Francis, when we had been doing this for about, I think, 2 years? One day I looked at Clark and I said, oh, we're following the moon.
Oh, tell me about that.
It's a 28-day rhythm. So you take a day in preparation, like that's day 0.
Like, for instance, the novena that we're currently praying in our Way of the Rose group all together ends next Monday. That will be the 54th day. The next day, we will reflect on the novena that we've just,
They're too often. There's a day of preparation.
Or a
day 0.
Day of reflection and a day of preparation.
And so what happens is you have these 2 28-day rhythms. And every moon, so there's a moon cycle in petition, a moon cycle in gratitude, a moon cycle in petition, a moon cycle in gratitude. And you find yourself praying with the moon.
So 2 moons, 1 prayer is the expression that we sometimes use to describe the novena as we pray it, because the 54 days sit just inside of a full a cycle of 2 moons.
And some people do it with the moon. The way of the rose, we keep it a little more orderly, because when you start doing it with the actual moon, things get wonky. And we got a big group, so we always start on a Thursday and end on a Monday. And
That's right.
Tuesday is the day of reflection.
Wednesday is the day of formulating your new petition, and we start again on a Thursday.
But what's it like to pray with the moon for a full cycle? Because the moon has a lot to teach us about prayer that we've forgotten. We tend in our modern world to treat prayer like a vending machine. Let me put in my prayer and let me get my candy bar. And I know what I'm ordering, I know what button I'm pushing, and I know what I'm going to get. And in fact, I often think of this vending machine that was in the basement of my library in college, where I often got a lot of candy bars at late nights. The candy bar somehow never really did it. But if you turned around from that vending machine, there was a door. And if you walked out that door, suddenly you would be refreshed and outdoors. And what the novena does is it gets us away from a vending machine relationship to prayer and teaches us how to begin to walk outside into a new world of possibilities. We don't know how or when the answer to our prayer is going to come, only that Our Lady is generous.
And it's not, I think it's not just that. We also, I think, have a kind of a performative, perfunctory approach to prayer in the modern world. And, one of the things that people get, I think, a little stuck on oftentimes when they first start to pray a Rosary Novena is they get this sort of performance anxiety, like, oh my God, what if I pray for the wrong thing, right? What if the thing I'm praying for my heart's desire isn't really my heart's desire, right? I mean, these are literally the kinds of concerns that can get people tied up in knots. And what we always say is that praying for something, anything, you can start anywhere, sets you on the path of the heart's desire. And with each novena, you get deeper and deeper into it. I don't know how many novenas I've prayed since I started doing this, but it's bound to be 60 or 70, something like that, 54-day novenas. And it was only like literally a few months ago that I realized that since I was 19, I'd wanted to be a full-time poet and to make my money that way. Literally, I'd had this dream in my heart for over 40 years. And I had never given myself permission to reach for that. And I did, and it worked. So it's a journey. It may sometimes take a long time, and you go through a lot of heart's desires on your way, on that path.
I think of it, I'm sure you've walked a labyrinth. And that 54-day rhythm is like the 54 twists and turns in a labyrinth. You come around the corner and suddenly you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm practically there. And yet there are another 30 days to go. And then you think, oh, I'm so far away. And there you're in the middle. Yeah. It's all answered. Yeah. Everything's happened. And I love that labyrinth rhythm, which is, it's not a maze. There are no dead ends. There are no tricks. There are no gotchas.
Yeah.
Once you're on the path, it only leads one place, which is to the center, to the heart.
Yeah. So let's talk about this whole heart topic, because I was raised Catholic, even though I don't consider myself Catholic anymore. I'm an interfaith minister, so I honor everybody, but I was raised with this idea of the vending machine. I was raised with this idea of like, if you want this, do this novena. If you want this, do like that kind of thing. But you guys really take people on this journey about heart's desire. And I know that it brings up stuff for people. It's just like, what do you mean my heart's desire? Like, what is it even? I don't even know. And what is it about this particular practice? Like, I don't even know the question I want to ask, but it's like, what is it about this 54-day process and the heart's desire? Because I can tell you, most people were not raised with this idea to pray for your heart's desire.
Yeah.
No, the modern world, the world we live in, does not want us to ask what we want. It wants to tell us what we want. You should want success. You should want a good credit rating. You should want a house. You should want to go to the college. You should want to be thin. You should want to be well,
You should want this car, not that car, this college, not that college, this job, not that job.
and not what is it you yearn for in your deepest, truest self? What is it that would give you the most joy? And it's a really radical question. And particularly women are not invited to ask that question. Men aren't either, but they have a more of an illusion of being able to allow to ask it. But certainly we don't want people who are disenfranchised to ask this question, right? It's a revolutionary question. And it's amazing how, I mean, Clark can tell you, Our Lady began appearing and speaking to him. Then she invited him to pray the rosary. Okay, we got this, right? I mean, granted. And he had been praying the rosary for 2 weeks when for the first time she got angry at him.
Well, I didn't experience it angry. She's more like a petulant girlfriend, maybe. like she literally she had appeared on we're coming up on the 10th anniversary, so June 16th, 2011. And she appeared, and then for a long time I wasn't really sure who she was. I mean, I guess in my heart I thought, oh, this is the Virgin Mary, but I really wanted her to be anybody but the Virgin Mary, because I was terrified I was going to have to become Catholic if that was.
I know. I had
But
a similar
finally,
experience.
like 10 weeks later, finally she woke me up with the words, if you rise to say the rosary tonight, a column of saints will support your prayer. And when I heard the rosary, I go, oh, okay, now that, you know, that's right. This is a Marian apparition. So I had taught myself the rosary some years earlier. So, and I, you know, amazingly had bought a rosary just the day before at the flea market. So I had one. So I started saying it. But I'd spent years as a Zen Buddhist monk, and I had chanted mantras and dharanis, right? I had a very sort of meditative, very one-pointed, focused way of practice. And so I was practicing the rosary like a mantra, you know. And believe me, Heart's Desire never, you know, I think the Buddha would know Heart's Desire if it bit him on the ass. You know? It's not any part of Buddhism. Okay.
Desires are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them, is the Buddha's vow.
There's one form of Buddhism, Nichiren Buddhism, we'll talk about another time, that does address the heart's desire and is therefore extremely popular in the modern world. But for the most part, it doesn't. So I was saying it like a mantra, and I was out on a walk saying the rosary, and I just finished my rosary and had just about to turn the driveway where the shrine is now. And she was there. And she stopped me and she said, you haven't prayed for anything yet. Is there nothing you want? This is where the petulant girlfriend comes in. It's like, what are we doing here? Like, you know, you're off in your own head. I thought we had a relationship, right? Like, what do you want? What can I give? What can I give you? What can I, you know, how are we going to play here? We're going to dance, right? Aren't we going to dance?
Right.
Is this a thing, or is this just you sitting there, you know, repeating the same words meditatively in the privacy of your own head, right? And honestly, I didn't know what to say. I had never once in my entire life given any thought to the question of heart's desire, like what I really wanted. What do
Clark
you
once
want?
said it was like a question out of a fairy tale,
It
and
was.
it is the fairy tale question.
It was.
You know, what is it? What is it we really?
What is your heart's desire?
And what's sort of extraordinary, Francis, and I'm sure you've seen this in Way of the Roses, in the beginning, can be for a lot of people a very scary question.
Yes.
Because there's also the fear, like, there's so many reasons the culture tells us not to ask this question. Oh my goodness, it's too late. I'm never going to get what I want. Well, I'm going to tell you, I watched once a 75-year-old woman pray to meet her soulmate, and 6 months later she was married.
Oh, I believe it.
That's not just once.
I've seen it again and again. You know what I mean?
We've seen this again and again.
What happens when we really, really dare? And it takes, you know, courage means heart. Cœur in France is heart. Courage and heart are connected. It's a really courageous question. And it's not, you know, a lot of times we want to pray for other people or pray for world peace, but I often jokingly say, I think of mothers, you know, I'm a mother, I've got kids. Nothing makes me happier than when my kids ask for something.
Hmm.
Mom, would you make the lasagna for dinner? Yes.
Yeah.
I want to be asked. Mom, could you get me that book? Yes. Today I found lion's mane mushrooms for my daughter at the grocery store. I snapped a photo. I said, I found them. And I think Our Lady gets great joy.
Hmm.
Great. When we bring her our prayers, we bring her the joy of relationship.
Hmm.
And it's a real relationship. It's an engaged, Mom, help me relationship.
It is so true. I mean, I tell this to the people in my membership all the time that, when I work with Mother Mary, she always says, whatever your problems are, whatever your joys are, give them to me, share them with me, because your pain is my pain, your joy is my joy. And she loves when we're like, can you help me with this? She's like, oh, ho, ho, rolling up her
Right.
sleeves saying, bring it on.
So,
Bring it on.
but let's go back to that idea of praying for world peace and stuff like that. People who still go to church, they are familiar with something you find, I think, in most Christian churches, certainly in Catholic churches, which is like the prayers for the people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they'll pray for this cause and that cause. And it's always, maybe if somebody's sick in the community, they get prayed for, but nobody stands up and says, give me the courage to leave my abusive alcoholic husband, right? I mean, there would just be gasps, right? Or, give me confidence in my job interview next week, right? You never hear that happen. So lately I've thought of it this way. It's like the praying for your heart's desire. It's a little bit like a kite, right? If you fly a kite, you've got a string, right? What happens if you let go of the string? Right? If you just say, let's give it to heaven, let's give my prayers to world peace. Let's really go really, really, really big. The kite falls, right? It's not attached to anything. It's not connected to anything. It's the same way with the flower. Flowers don't grow in the sky. They grow in the dirt. Now they reach up toward the sky, right? They yearn for the sun, right? Plants naturally grow upwards, but only because they only live and thrive and blossoms because they are rooted in their own soil. And so our prayers have, in order to bear fruit and to benefit those in our family and our community and the world, they have to have a root, and that root is in our own lives. And so we have to begin to draw the nourishment of Our Lady's love and this sort of intrinsic compassion and blessedness of the world up from the ground, through the soles of our own feet and our own lives. And if we're really grounded in our own lives and praying for our own heart's desire, all kinds of other blessings will naturally extend through us to other people.
I mean, think about people who are praying. I mean, we've all had the experience, I suspect, of praying for somebody who's locked inside of an addiction and the horror and the heartbreak of that. But what about the moment the addicted person comes to you and says, I'm praying for sobriety. Will you pray with me?
Mm.
When we begin to pray for ourselves, we become unstoppable.
Yeah.
And suddenly there is such a relief. And what about the person who's praying for their own joy? They have joy to give.
Yeah.
If we all have, it's like we all have a bottomless well of joy within us. And if we learn how to draw up that water from our own being, we can share it with a lot of people.
Yeah.
We've got it. It's not gonna dry up. We're not gonna, some people think like, if I get what I want, nobody else will get what they want, or I'm being selfish to pray for
The
myself.
zero-sum game, yeah.
But in fact, it's actually responsible to pray for your own heart's desire.
I love that you're saying this, because I read this in the Facebook group last week, I think it was, where someone was like, oh, I don't want to pray for myself because that's like bad or something. And you were like, wrong.
Well, I didn't say wrong. I tried to be gentle and say it.
If
no,
you
but in
don't
your
pray,
experience, the power really comes when
Right.
you're, it's like connecting yourself into that power is what I'm trying to say.
It is. And I think also, there's a lot of church related, not my will, but thy will be done, and with this battle of wills. And we're not talking about wills, we're talking about love.
Yeah.
And I think when Our Lady Our Lady wants us to play with her, dance with her. This is a dance. This isn't a battle.
Yeah.
And when we dance with somebody, when we find ourselves in rhythm with somebody, and suddenly, your prayers, you may begin, somebody comes to us and they don't have a job, and they don't have a car to get to that job, and they don't have income. They got some pretty basic life needs they got to pray for, right?
Mm.
And then they realize they got to pray for confidence, and then they got to pray for healing with their kids, and all kinds of things start to unfold.
They can start off praying for a job, and then find themselves a year later with a job, but not the job they want, and then suddenly begin to think, well, what is my heart's path? Like, what is the thing that's going to make me get up every morning and just can't wait to get to work because I just love it so much and it's so meaningful, right? And so we that's what we mean by the path of the heart's desire. I want to say one thing though, even though thy will, it's not a battle of wills, it's not a war or anything like that. We often hear Catholic priests say things like the rosary is the weapon, right? Presumably they mean, against abortion or against communism or against something, right? You hear a lot of talk like that. The rosary is not a weapon, but the rosary is proof against the toxicity of the culture. Because if we know what it is that we truly want, the culture does not have that much power over us. We are not looking to the culture for our primary reference point for our value, our satisfaction, our feeling of belonging, all the most basic things connected to our well-being. We begin to draw those things directly from friendship and family and from the earth around us and from the community around us. And the culture has less power or control over us, can't manipulate us as much because it manipulates people who don't know what they want. The culture steps in to tell you what to want, what to desire. If you have no clear path of the heart's desire within yourself, the culture will eat you alive. And the rosary is proof against that.
And Francis, what I would say is we have a lot of meetings on Way of the Rosary, a lot of circles. And these are leaderless circles. People come together to pray the rosary for their heart's desire together. Yeah. And they're really fun. I love them. I mean, they're so much fun. Yeah. And we have almost 10 meetings, different meetings a day. We have meetings that are LGBTQ meetings focused. And everyone is welcome at every meeting. We have a men's meeting, women are welcome. It's male,
The women never come. You're welcome. I'm just saying, we'd love it if the women.
But we have all kinds of meetings every day and rosary circles for people to pray their heart's desire. And I'll tell you, I go to a lot of these meetings. What do people pray for? I want to heal. I want to feel joy in my family. I want love. I want meaningful work. I want to feel like my life has purpose. Right. I want to feel confidence. I want
to recover from cancer. I mean, sometimes health things are very.
But what I'm struck by is important. What people really, really want is so basic and so wholesome, right?
Yeah.
And yet it can often take so much courage to say, I don't want to be depressed anymore.
Right. And the moment you begin to pray for that, you begin to feel that there's some part of you that doesn't want, the behaviors that hold that depression in place, the relationships that hold it in place, the, profession that holds it in place, whatever, like suddenly you begin to feel, those inner blocks and obstacles shifting and dissolving.
I mean, there was a woman who this novena that we're in, she began it by praying to help her get rid of her rage. She said, my anger is a problem. I want to get rid of my rage. I was at a meeting recently and she said, thank you, lady. And then we're in the thank you part of the novena. So the first part you're praying in petition. And then you get to that second moon and you're saying thank you, whether or not you've seen results. Because oftentimes the results are behind your back and you got to turn around to look at them. It's like that. You got to turn around and walk out the door. But this woman comes to a meeting last week and says, lady, thank you for showing me that anger is my life force.
Mm, that's
Thank you for
awesome.
showing me how much life force I have. And thank you for beginning to show me how to use it more productively. And that, what had happened was her very petition had changed. She began by praying to get rid of what she considered a character fault.
She
And,
ended up empowered.
and she ended up feeling empowered and really using her power in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. We see this all the time.
And it was beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, so let's catch people up so they understand what a rosary circle, what a meeting is, what happens in them, and then
Well,
because we want to be able to send people if they want to participate in these, we want to send them
right,
somewhere. So give them a little
right.
bit of an idea about what to expect, and then I'm going to ask another question about that whole idea of if your petition manifests and you're only on day 5, like what happens. So talk about the meetings first.
Friends, let's talk about spiritual friendship,
Yeah.
because the one, the novena petition is between you and Our Lady. That's all you need. You got her, it's you. Go to town, whatever you want to call her, from Mary to Freya to Kali, whatever you want to call her. But when you go on a long hike or a pilgrimage, it's so nice to have friends to chat with on the way. And there's so, Our Lady ends up speaking through those friends.
Yeah.
I've never been to a meeting where I haven't learned about my own heart from the stories and the petitions other people are telling in that circle.
And let's talk about that circle for a minute. One of the themes of our book, The Way of the Rose, and of our whole fellowship is circles, not lines, right? Not lineages of authority, not straight lines of progress, not, having to color within the lines and, all that goes along with, a sort of a pulpit to pew kind of authoritarian type of religion. We don't have any of that. We in our face-to-face meetings, we sit in a circle. At our Zoom meetings, during COVID, everybody's equal. They're just all there in little squares. And, there's a person who sort of like convenes the meeting on Zoom, but what we do in the first minute or two of the meeting
Is delegate authority.
is delegate authority to 5 or 6 different people. And so people will take responsibility for, the rosary has mysteries that you reflect on while you're saying the prayers. We recite 5 mysteries on any given meeting. So people will volunteer to lead that mystery, and they will recite the prayers out loud while everybody at home or in the rest of the room, recites along with them. But they'll reflect on what it means. And sometimes they'll tell their own story in doing that frequently. And so there's this multiplicity of voices, right? This plurality of voices, which deconstructs all the more toxic sort of, aspects that people associate with religion. We have people coming in who are describe themselves as Catholic in recovery, right? And some of them are quite traumatized when they arrive, and they walk into our circles and it's like vertigo the first time they come. We go, wait, who's in charge? Wow, can somebody really say that? Wow, I heard somebody curse during use profanity during their description of the mysteries. Is that allowed? Yes.
And one of the, once I was, so we pray out loud together and we share our hearts with each other.
Yeah.
We find the courage to speak our heart's desire out loud in a community of friends. That's right. And that's really powerful.
And there are no experts and no authorities. They're just friends
and
on an equal footing.
Once at one meeting I went to at a Wednesday night meeting, it was a very wonderful, lively young people's meeting on Wednesday night. And some young woman came and she volunteered to lead the first set of mysteries. And then she said, oh, wait a minute, I don't know how to pray the Hail Mary. She'd never prayed a rosary before, and she was leading. And everybody in the group just talked her through the first Hail Mary, and then she said, okay, I got it.
And then she was leading her first, her first
Wow.
time saying the rosary. She was leading that portion of the meeting.
And we often say that, how do we make more meetings? Well, you come and you say, my gosh, I wish there was a meeting at Tuesdays at 2:00. That would be really good for me. And we go, you want to start a meeting at Tuesdays at 2:00?
Yeah.
And people will come, and they do. One young woman from France said, I would like, she's the most beautiful accent I can't do, but she said, I would like a meeting where we could all knit and embroider and sew and paint together. And she said, we said, why not? And so
She
the
started the,
Saturday morning creative rosary has people from all over the world coming to knit and sew and paint
and
and pray the
draw
rosary together in
and
devotion
bead
to
and
Our
just
Lady.
do whatever creative expression they do while they pray the rosary.
And that in some way is the most beautiful envisioning of the heart's
Yeah.
desire.
Yeah.
Oh, that seems like a practice that is like from a past life or something. That seems like ancestors were doing that, sitting around saying the rosary and knitting and
Well,
doing
they
all
were.
that.
And they
They
were,
were.
and they were,
Yeah.
and it's amazing how popular it is. It's
You know, that's worth exploring too, because you know, the rosary is the indigenous practice for a lot of people in the world, right? And it's a European practice, and you know, anyone can do it. It's not confined. No one who decides to pray the rosary is appropriating it or anything like that. But certainly, anybody with a shred of like, you know, European, you know, blood, you know, can just take on this practice, and their ancestors are there below them. Like these are people who, you know, going back generations and generations have said these prayers over and over again. That these prayers were used to tell time. They were used in recipes. Like if you go back to old cookbooks from the Middle Ages, they say allow to rise for a space of 12 Ave Marias,
Oh my goodness, I had
right?
no
yeah.
idea about
Leave in the oven for one rosary, right? Like this was, they didn't have clocks, right? And how long would you be gone? 4 Aves.
that.
So
Wow.
4 Ave Marias. That's how long. It's just a short errand, right? So these things were, and they lived their lives by church bells. They were constantly saying these prayers, and they were descriptive and expressive of the stuff of their lives. And so what we're really doing is we're tapping into these very, very old traditions, but not being bound by any of the theological, you know, churchly constraints associated with them.
And let me just say something, because when you know the word indigenous gets thrown around a lot these days, and I want to speak to it, which is the rosary goes back with the prayers we know, you know, 1500, 1000, 1500 years. But beads, using beads in prayers, goes back 100,000 years. 100,000 years.
Wow.
That using beads to pray and to feel help. If you look at a bead, and I talk about this all the time, and you want to talk about the heart's desire, people have been making beads in times of crisis as long as we've been Homo sapiens. There have been climate change catastrophes in that 100,000 year period, ice ages, volcanic eruptions. And what have been people's response? They've made beads, and they've held those beads and they've prayed with them. And the reason they've done so is if you look at a bead, here's a bead, perfect example. I'll hold it up for those who are on Zoom, and you roll it between your fingers. You'll realize why this is such a comforting feeling. Take a bead, anyone, roll it between your fingers, and you will feel your blood pressure go down. You will feel your vagus nerve, they've proven this, fall into rhythm with your heart. Because a bead is a nipple. And our first gesture when we come out of our mother's womb is to hold that nipple.
To look for it,
to look for it, to find it. And when we hold it, we get the source of our comfort. Often when they talk about Our Lady, her sweetness and her consolation, the sweetness of her milk, the consolation of her arms, we are held. And there is nothing that cannot be answered once we're holding on.
So powerful, you guys. Okay, we want to give people some resources.
Okay.
If they want to start diving in here. So obviously, The Way of the Rose, if you don't have it, go get it right now. This is an awesome book. I read it and I reread it. I read a little bit of it every night because it's so powerful and so amazing. And this will help you if you're just learning to, like, how do I say a rosary and what do I do and all of that, as well as your website, Way of the Rose, and it's wayoftherose.org. Is that right?
Wayoftherose.org.
Yeah. And so I'll have all of this in the show notes so people can find it. But if you go to wayoftherose.org, you will also find resources for the meetings that they were talking about, as well as how to pray the rosary. If you want to have somebody make a rosary for you, you want to have one that maybe doesn't have a crucifix on it, all kinds of resources. So that's wayoftherose.org. And then if they want to really start doing novenas and learning about it with you and the beautiful work that you do, where would they find that?
Well, there are two ways to do it. You can just come to a meeting. You can go to thewayoftherose.org, find a meeting on the calendar, and come start praying with us. And there's a lot of how-to material on the website, but have this Facebook group, Way of the Rose, the Way of the Rose, and it's a very lively support group. And it has a subgroup called the 54-Day Novena Community that really provides daily support. The way we do it is it's live and crowdsourced. People volunteer to lead for 3, 6, or 9 days, and they tell their stories.
Yeah.
And they tell their miracle stories and their inspiration. And every day people share their artwork, their music, and their storytelling. And it really becomes very empowering. A part of our job, when Our Lady appeared to Clark, she had tape over her mouth that Clark took off. And he took the tape off her mouth, but Our Lady takes the tape off all of our mouths. So the Way of the Rose is a place for people to tell their stories, give voice to their prayers, and learn the power of their own voice in the world.
Really, our group is really about people claiming their voices, and their right to speak, how they really feel, to be heard by others, to be seen by others, and that's a lot of what goes on. It goes on in our Facebook group as people share with one another, just providing support and friendship. Okay.
And Clark and I will always step in if somebody's not being nice.
Somebody's
That's our
not-
one rule. We don't have a
Does
lot of
not
rules. We always
happen
say no
very often.
rosary police, except we do say, we do like play nice is our one
We have a
rule.
lot of romper room for those old enough to remember that show. You have a lot of romper room sort of type slogans like friendship first, right?
You can you can disagree nicely.
Yeah. So we don't have we have remarkably few spats on Way of the Rose, because it's just really, a lot of people are just on Facebook to belong to this group, like literally all they do on Facebook.
And what we say is we're devoted to the Lady by any name you want to call her, which means that we are not an exclusively Christian or Catholic group. You will find devotees of Kuan Yin, devotees of Kali, devotees of Mary Magdalene, devotees of this or that.
And a lot of people who just really see, for whom Our Lady is really the earth, right? One of our slogans is ecology, not theology, right? We're not real big on, there's not a lot of theological talk, even on Way of the Rose. There's a lot of talk about flowers and animals and
mushrooms
and
a lot
weather.
of discussion of mushrooms.
And weather, We're sort of a very animist sort of group. Everything's
Well, I just appreciate this conversation so much, because I learn from you guys so much every time, whether I actually have the pleasure of talking to you directly or it's just in the group. It's just amazing. And I believed you when you said that Our Lady said, pray the rosary and that will help with like the world and climate change. And I was always like, really? Like, okay. But when you just described it, it's like, oh, it pulls us out of the toxic pull of the society. I was like, that's how it works. Now, I mean, not that's the only way it works, but now I understand. It's like, oh, because that's what we all need. That's what's going to heal.
We need the courage to be able to look at what's really happening. And if you're holding Our Lady, she steadies you and gives you the courage to see things as they are. And not to run away. And she also inspires you, and
and she also
with what to do.
I often say, I believe in a woman's right to choose, but I also believe in Our Lady's right to decide what to do with her own body. And we as human beings have made too many choices. My job is to listen to what she wants to do and to help and collaborate with her. There's a wonderful book, Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. I don't know if you know it. It's about Indigenous ways of collaborating with the earth. And Our Lady uses our heart's desire to get us to collaborate with her.
Yeah.
She knows what she needs us to do.
And
And she's planted seeds in our hearts so that in praying for our heart's desire, we end up doing what she needs us to do.
And to steady us and to calm us. You know, a person who's praying for their heart's desire consumes a lot less, right? So a person who knows what really satisfies and who's learned through prayer and learned from Our Lady what truly meets their needs and truly satisfies their hearts isn't so busy consuming shopping and just consuming a lot of things that don't really make them happier and don't really make the world a better place. So it's really, sometimes it's just that simple. It calms people down.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so, and it's so healing. That's just so healing.
Makes us feel less.
Oh, yay. I'm so grateful to get to spend this time with you guys. And
We
I'm
are
looking
too,
forward
Frances.
to, you guys have more books coming out. I know there's great things going on. So I'm definitely going to encourage everybody, if you want to know when the next book's going to come out, which is going to be on this very topic that we're talking about of praying for your
You're
heart's
writing
desire.
Perdita is writing the third book in the trilogy right now.
And that's seeking a publisher right now. So there's a book,
Awesome.
actually. We pray for the dead at Way of the Rose, and as well,
Right.
we always invite the dead, and inviting those ancestral grandmothers in is a big part of what we do. So I have a book about them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the name of the book, are you working on that book? Or is
It's
it out now?
done. It's called Take Back the Magic, Getting to Know the Dead, and hopefully it'll be published in the next year. I'm going to ask everybody for a few prayers.
Yeah.
As it navigates the post-COVID publishing process, but
Yeah. Awesome. Oh, I look forward to it. Yeah. So if you want to find out all this great stuff, definitely go to waytherose.org and get on the list and connect and go to the Facebook group, and you'll be in that energy of knowing what's coming down the road. And if we ever get to see people in person again, which I'm sure that we will sometime soon, that would be awesome as well. Thank you guys so much. I'm so
Thank you.
grateful.
Thank
So
you,
grateful.
Frances.
And for the listeners, remember, see, we live in this beautiful energy of miracles. And Mother Mary always says the very first step is to remember that your miracle is already here. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Wonderful.